I have always been extremely passionate about sport. Our aim is to change 100 million lives. Change is anything, right? But if you think about, on average, we have 1 million people. When you cross over a finishing line, we change a life. We strongly believe in that.
We've got Matt Brooke, Senior VP Global Operations for Spartans and Tough Mudder.
When the opportunity arises and the commercials for all parties involved are right, you've got to just go for it. Nothing says teamwork more genuinely than getting in mud, overcoming obstacles which require people to help one another. Collaboration, getting through it and coming out the other side, leaving no person behind, right? That is teamwork. We have people tattoo our brands on their body, which means it's been a big part of their life, right? You don't do that on a whim.
Welcome to FounderMetrics by Vested, the podcast where we dive into the world of hotshot business leaders and the specific metrics, not just the usual KPIs, that drive their game-changing companies forward. I'm your host, Ifti Nasser, CEO and founder of Vested, and I'm excited to take you on this journey with me into the world of successful founders. Today I've got Matt Brooke here, who's a Senior Vice President for Global Operations for Tough Mudder and Spartans. Tell us more about what these Spartans and Tough Mudders do.
So Ifti, thank you so much for having me on today for FounderMetrics, and it's great to be able to come and share a bit about our space, our industry, which is the world of mud running and obstacle course racing. So Tough Mudder and Spartan are a global business in the mass participation sports sector. So when you think about events like the London Marathon, or you think about what we were talking about earlier, obviously our competitors of ours in Ironman. So we play in the space which is adventure and endurance sports, and effectively we do events all around the world that bring people together in multi-terrain through kind of experiencing and overcoming obstacles physically and mentally through our races and our events.
Brilliant. Well, as I say, thanks for joining me today, Matt. But do you want to give us a bit of a backstory before you joined this extreme sport world?
Yeah, so I have always been extremely passionate about sport, both participating and experiencing it, kind of vicariously through different channels, TV and watching it. And ever since I went to university, I went to Loughborough University.
Very sporting
Very
world.
sporting, proud to be, but part of the alumni there. And that kind of just set my path and the trajectory, and you get exposed to a whole different way of looking at sport when you're at that institution. And I came out and I ended up finding a first job, which was in kind of sports presentation, which is the kind of when you go to see a show or you go to see a sporting fixture, there's a show behind the show. So you bought your ticket to go and watch the football or watch the rugby or the cricket or whatever it might be. And you have the pyrotechnics, you have the big screen, you have the jib cam that kind of zooms in and on people, and that kind of just started my affinity. Right, it was a way in which it opened the door again to another lens of looking at sort of the behind the scenes. And when I was in that role, there was opposite us. There was an agent for Victoria Pendleton, the Olympic cyclist. And at the time, it was in around just before 2012, but then in around the 2012 Olympics, and it was a heyday. And I ended up finding through her, she had an enterprise with now what would then become a boss for quite some time, a business called Participate, and they had an event series called Cycletta, which was women-only cycling.
Right.
And she was using her reach, her empowerment to be able to get more people active, fit, and ultimately in the saddle. So I hopped ships, and that then became my world, which was mass participation sports. And since then, I've worked in and on for running events, triathlon events, swimming, cycling, from in the UK and across some of the world, culminating in some periods with a big sports agency. And then I worked for, or a business I was with was acquired by the Tour de France. It's a company called ASO, Amaury Sports Organisation.
I was going to say that we were talking earlier about different things that fall within a similar space. Yeah, Tour de France type.
Which was phenomenal. We were part of running. They had an event in the UK called the Tour de Yorkshire, which was a big professional cycling part of the UCI kind of series and circuit. Televised.
So your own franchise, because a lot of the guys that we talk to are often people who've set up the founders of the businesses. I guess it was quite important to go a little bit beyond to help founders on their journey to look at people who are going to help them in that process, especially in operations. So there's loads of people who will have that international aspirations, and certainly Tough Mudders and Spartans is very much international, as you mentioned earlier. I mean, how many countries are you guys operating in?
So currently we're in 43 countries, right. and that's a mixture, which again I think for the listeners is really important. That whilst the brand and the business is a global business, it's divided into kind of two different ways of doing business and conducting its business. And one is owned and operated entities,
Right.
And the other arm is franchise.
I guess, as you say, it's very much their business then, within the rules of the game.
Correct.
And so you put it quite nicely. Yeah, it's a different hat. It's a very, very different role. So when you're looking at the franchise folk who have their own ideas of how to do business, what business means, certainly in different geographies, and having worked in several different places, yep. I can quite appreciate that. How do you make sure, given your responsibility, that things are actually done in the way, the ethics, the brand that you're projecting? Yeah,
and that's a challenge, to put it bluntly. It is tough. So there are multiple kind of things you have to consider outside of just our brand and business, our core consistencies. Yeah. Like you just touched upon there, the geographies of our partners, of our franchisees. There are wildly different ways of doing business in different parts of the world. And I certainly don't profess to be knowledgeable as to all of those. And so it's really a question about trying to understand, or working with our partners to understand quite often what's on the horizon. So, we never talk about, outside of, actual direct deliverables, but what's on the 18 months, 24 months, 36 months horizon? What is the plan to get there? We then frame our understanding of our business and our brand to be able to nurture them in their plan and their vision. Mm-hmm. And certainly not telling them what they can or can't do, because again, if they have a plan where they're going to be able to go and find or raise, for all intents and purposes, $50,000 of tourism money, the reality is we don't know whether that's achievable or not in their market necessarily. But we do know how they might go and raise funding or support for partnerships or sponsorships, and how to leverage the tools and the assets that we have available to us to be able to do that. And therefore we can, again, provide added value there.
So when it comes to the established markets, your approach there, are you looking to broaden that franchise model within those existing markets as well? Because, clearly it's a big growth hack. It's a well-known growth hack.
Yeah, I think there's twofold. We have had a pretty turbulent time as a business through the pandemic. The nature of ours.
That was something we're going to pick up on later.
Exactly,
but for it.
A nature of our business and this affects all of our licensed partners and enterprises around the world. You go from bringing millions of people together in a live event space one day, and the next day, all around the world, you're literally doing nothing. And so, to your point about kind of where are we focusing on supporting, we're actually looking about how we had to do a lot of consolidation over the last kind of 12, 24 months coming out of the pandemic. And the past 12 months and the future 12 months, 24 months is really about kind of growth through the consolidation that we've achieved, beyond necessarily broadening, what we want to be, or the markets or the consumers that we want to be targeting or engaging with. And I think to that point, one where we're working with our partners especially is really about hyper focus. The space in which we're operating now is wildly different to that in 2019 and before. Consumer habits, cost of delivery, technology, we're talking about the rise of AI, and just even the digital space is wildly different to even a few years ago. And therefore, until we found that truly consolidated base within that new space, it's less prudent to go and turn attentions elsewhere, because you need that foundation, that base.
Yeah.
That's what we tell all of our partners, right? Don't go necessarily diversify right now. When you're seeing shoots of growth, like focus in on amplification of what you have, because that's also easiest to get.
So talking about those seeds of growth, I mean, at the moment, who is your actual customer? I would imagine that in the Western Hemisphere, you've got a lot of these endurance addicted individuals that you're potentially marketing to. But I can also imagine it being very much a corporate type sponsorship engagement model as well. Do you think it's the same across the geographies that you're playing in and the business models that you're working with?
Yes and no. So obviously, B2C, direct to consumer, is the lion's share of what we do. We're a mass participation business and brand, and therefore we need to be reaching a mass audience. And the easiest way to do that is often, direct to consumer.
Yeah.
We obviously, you are also right. We have a huge part of kind of network and integrations with corporates, and that B2B play, and that's because, especially in Western worlds, corporate social responsibility, health and wellness, all of these endeavors which are becoming more and more prevalent and part of society are also becoming part of business. And we are a space where just the nature of our events brings people together. Right? Nothing says teamwork more genuinely than getting in mud, overcoming obstacles which require people to help one another. Collaboration, getting through it and coming out the other side with leaving no person behind. Right, that is teamwork. And so, of course, we lend ourselves pretty favourably to being able to answer the needs of corporates, in that business world. So,
a few things I wanted to ask. One is around that decision to go international. I guess this was before you even turned up in the business. But I mean, do you have an understanding as to how and why that decision was made? And then the second piece would be, now that you're in that international position and the different hats that you're wearing, how often do you have to change them on a daily basis? Or is it just there's an event going on now, so for this week or this period run up to that event, I've just got this hat on, and it's this type of role that we're in? So first going international, and then secondly, how you actually manage that.
No, that's a good one. So obviously, international rollout happened pretty instantly for when Spartan and Tough Mudder were born.
Yeah.
It's really important to note that Spartan and Tough Mudder were two separate businesses, and Spartan acquired Tough Mudder actually just before the pandemic. So if I talk about probably the core business, i.e. the Spartan business, which is the master brand of our house of brands, our founder and our CEO is a brilliant entrepreneur called Joe DeSena. His background is fairly eclectic. And for listeners listening, please just go and Google him, and you'll find out all sorts. And you'll find out the fundamentals pretty much for where we are and why we are as who we are as a brand and a business. Obviously, he's an American. He was an American living in Asia at the time, in which he founded and created the brand. And it then meant all of a sudden we had two sides of the world in which he was wanting to stand up, and to create noise, to create to create volume, and so I think it was, rather than necessarily a thought out longer term what's on the horizon, it was more where geographies and where he was at the time, and
happenstance opportunity.
And I think that's a big part of our business. When we think even about other international markets, and I was just on the phone with some interested parties in Georgia and Armenia and Azerbaijan, literally only last week, and we're just about to launch India, for example, which this year.
That could be incredible.
So many different markets where it's not necessarily about us thinking about those markets or territories to expand into, but when the opportunity arises and the commercials for all parties involved are right, you've got to just go for it. We have the core, we have the fundamentals of a business that can handle, this international rollout and expansion.
So it sounds like it's more a case of, rather than you guys going out and pushing for people to come and take up new franchises or whatever, it's people coming to you and asking, can we set up the franchise in country or location X?
Pretty much, and obviously in business, initially when there was a rollout, Joe was living in Japan at the time, and we obviously had the North America business. The UK is naturally a pillar market. There would have been directed focus and attention on standing up core global markets, and then everything else in between is once you set up those core and we have process, governance and practice, bedded in, we can take on more, and it's one where we're really fortunate because of the foundations that we've built and the strength of the brand, that we get at interest. We get appetite from coming in, and we don't do an awful lot to go out and necessarily shout from the rooftops about the brand. So it's really fortunate.
So, given what you were saying earlier, it's teamwork, it's collaboration, it's bringing people together. I can understand exactly how that will have been a really powerful business proposition coming into 2019, 2020. COVID must change that.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. It made it kind of. We had to pivot on its head.
So I can't imagine you going virtual.
Well, we did. Literally.
And I guess that's what I'd like to understand exactly how you did that, because you've got this business model. I mean, it looks almost impossible to go virtual with. But
no, in person, you have an in-person enterprise and business. It's built on the vicarious relationships that people forge in the moment.
Yeah.
When you take that away, what are you left with, right? And the business pivoted hard to essentially go digital overnight. And it ended up going into a space where it was about bringing that community, or the ways in which we bring a community together in person. How do we bring it together in a space, like in a digital forum, in a digital setting where people aren't able to go outside? And the great thing that we had was that we weren't trying to do this in isolation. So the world was doing this, right? Everybody at home was consuming through some form of screen medium. And how we were able to cut through is by creating then forums through our platforms, through our media channels, which enable people still to come together, right? So if they're doing training, if they're working out, we did virtual races, we did virtual events, we did virtual challenges. And we celebrated them in the same way we would celebrate in person.
But it's that thing, you're holding on to people, going back to that behavioural stuff, people who had gotten to know Spartan became impassioned with it in some way or another. And I guess to a degree maybe wanting to hold on to something related to that old world that just wasn't even anywhere close to possible.
Wasn't there?
Now.
Yeah, exactly. And we had to play on that.
Yeah,
we had to play on that. And that, as I said, it's not to say that we didn't lose customers through that period. We understand it. But also what's really interesting, and this is probably the biggest upside that we've seen in our business, is the changes that we made have enabled us to grow at a much more exponential rate than we thought we would do post-pandemic.
Which of those changes specifically?
Predominantly around our ways in which we approach kind of a multi-channel deployments or playbooks, kind of strategies. So how social is linking into CRM, which is linking into media and press, which is linking to on-site experience. The whole ecosystem is far more interconnected now than what it once was.
So right now, I guess there's lots of different ways, given it's a big international business now. How do you keep a track, both on a day-to-day basis, so that the business is actually working okay? Now that we're well past COVID, we're in this new world, and more on a across the year basis. Not just EBITDA and revenue growth, but what are the other things, the sense checks that allow you to get a feel that things are okay.
Yeah, no,
Even though you're not in that location, let's say.
yeah, definitely. So obviously, yeah, you have your traditionals, your turnover, and your EBITDA. That's no different to any other business. We look a lot about, as we just spoken about our consumer set
Yeah.
and who is our currently engaged customer. We look at metrics like age. Because age is huge. We don't want to be a growing age. If you've got a stable age, it's not necessarily a bad thing, but we need to continue to be skewing younger, right? Because then you get that customer for a longer cycle.
Yeah.
You
got it.
Exactly. We look at demographics of that consumer set, and we evaluate that across the global footprint. What are the nature of our audiences that we're appealing to? Are we then activating and delivering in the spaces in which they're engaging with? How can we find
Are those
tune and
demographic differences quite marked across the different geographies?
Not hugely. The reasons, again, we do a lot of customer surveys, etc. The reasons why customers and communities rate in our different markets or participate in our different markets does vary. For example, in the UK, a huge proportion of the Tough Mudder audience is for fundraising and it's for charity.
Yeah.
And that's because inherently in our sector, in our space, we have a very active charitable mindset in across society, not just necessarily in mass participation sports. If you rolled that out to Indonesia, for example, that's not the case. There isn't that mindset. And actually people are participating because it's the power of group, right? Group in societies, coming together, friendships, etc. That you do things, and it's a space of getting out there. If you went to, and I'm not just saying this for saying this, but genuinely, if you look at Italy, for example, Italy has one of our highest percentages of photo purchases post-event. And so therefore what you see is because people want to, it's a social status, right? They're fit, they're active, they want to shout about it. And it's consistent. That's every single year. And therefore we provide them opportunities in which we can serve them what they need. And
good business.
Yeah.
If people give them more value and they'll reward you for it.
Exactly. But we recognize that is then the consumer set, right? The consumer set is doing it for a particular attribute or objective or desire. So we look at things like that across the business. We inherently look at social measures and metrics. We look at new customers, repeat customers, as we spoke about earlier. We understand and we evaluate the market as a whole. Right, we do a lot of work about benchmarking and broadly what's happening in our space, and then even larger than that, obviously, it's the sporting space. So it's there's nothing necessarily one thing. It's holistically something that's ongoing across the board.
So roughly how many people do you have engaged right now? You were saying earlier, total number again?
In terms of, so it's just over 1 million participants that we see. Of that, so
65%.
It's about 65. So it'll be about 650, 700,000 active engaged. But reminding them, obviously, that 30, that balance, that 30, 35% are still engaged because they're participating in year. They're not necessarily going to be continually engaged.
So how do you see that evolving over the next 3 to 5 years? I mean, you've got a big chunk.
Yep.
What proportion of the opportunity do you think you're already capturing? Or is it still miles to go?
I would say there's still quite some way to go. There are a lot of things in which, like any business, we can refine. We're starting to embrace AI, for example, to through our customer journey, through the ways in which we are presenting or doing our customer service, through on-site experiences, everything that will kind of empower a even closer connection. And what we're hoping with is, through empowering a closer connection, we're able to elevate that repeat customer rate. Because it becomes more direct, right? It becomes more personable. And when you're a business on our scale, maintaining that personal touch and approach is challenging, and it's definitely a shift.
It is, but I think that's a brilliant use of AI. A good example. You've got 1 million data sets that are relatively real time and probably have been evolving over the last 3-4 years, etc. You know that. What are the analogies? What are the ways in which you're going to be able to tap into whole new user groups just from being able to align with the people who are already with you? That's massive.
And we've seen,
How do you reach them?
Data shows us that engagement levels, kind of, if you even look at emails, like click-throughs and open rates, are far higher when it's personalised, when it's directed, than not. And so, again, we're doing a big push. We're scratching the surface as to what it looks like around membership and what it looks like around to kind of 365 days, touchable moments, not just your event cycle or your training cycle or etc. There's obviously just natural growth, both in terms of acquisition of new customers and efficiencies on site, which enables us to have bigger events. We're definitely not reach saturation point in terms of growth just organically through of new audiences.
But where would you see the potential? What's the number in your mind? If somebody said you've got X people engaged in Spartans at one brand or another, what number would surprise you? Would it be 10 million?
No, I definitely don't. So our mantra is, just for this will help context, is we always say we're on, our aim is to change 100 million lives.
Excellent.
So change is anything, right? But, if you think about on average, we have 1 million people, and we classify as when you cross over a finishing line, we change your life. Yeah. We strongly believe in that.
Well,
so
that's
1 million
the case
people.
with your competitors like Ironman. I mean, every person who's done Ironman, you talk to them, and it's the journey to there, and as you say, across the finish line is.
It's there. We have people tattoo our brands on their body, which means it's been a big part of their life, right? You don't do that on a whim. And so if you think about that 100 million, if we had an ecosystem or a business that no number would surprise me in terms of the opportunity that we had. And I'm not just saying that as a throwaway comment. Yeah. But if we turned around and you said in 5 years' time we had 10 million people participating across our house of brands, our house of hard, Tough Mudder and Spartan being only one of them, two of them, it wouldn't surprise me. And I say that through both sophistication, through market growth, through optimization, through efficiency, through noise telling. I think we're in a space at the moment where...
Noise telling? What's that?
Through in terms of, creation of noise, amplification of the brand, through different channels, not necessarily just through participation. We have... we're scratching the surface in terms of the strength of the brand, let alone, and it being... we could diversify, and we will diversify the brand outside of just... Spartan's a lifestyle. It's not necessarily, Spartan 35,000 years ago, right? It was a way of life.
Rather than Marlborough clothing, you can have Spartan.
So we already do. I'm wearing it here.
Yeah,
but we have a big business, a big part of our business, which turns over several $1 million a year, is clothing and apparel. That's an element which we can grow into. Yeah. So, and that then becomes, that nature when you talk about 10,000 people, or within our ecosystem. They could be engaged in a different way. They don't necessarily have to be doing one of our core businesses.
Yeah, they don't even have to.
And that's an engaged customer. So there are different ways in which you can look at it. But 10,000 people, active customers, in a number of years' time would not faze me or surprise me.
Brilliant. Yeah, you're a global head. So how many of these locations have you personally been to?
If you ask my wife, too many.
Yeah.
I have a wife and a little one at home, and being on the road is tough. But I have been to at least probably half, if not 3/4 of the markets in which we operate in. For seeing our events last year, it probably works out twice a month.
Yeah.
I'm on the road. Ideally not too much, but it's more about being present than necessary.
Given the role that you have, I mean, you could do a good chunk virtually, I should imagine.
You
but
definitely could, and we're also playing a bit of catch up, right?
Yeah.
Our partners, just like the businesses, when you've got when you're running a business, you want to have the full engagement, and sometimes face-to-face meetings are the best.
Yeah.
Pandemic stopped all that for everybody. And so we're a bit about playing catch up when we're a business that's built on face-to-face, direct experience. And you have to live that the way in which we're delivering our business as well, not just, the events that we're putting on. So I think it's, it definitely is right. But it's also, for me, it's an opportunity to just check in, really see.
Both with the partners and the team.
Correct.
And the event. itself.
Check in, our quality management teams that go around the world all the time. We have operational delivery teams on the ground. We obviously then have, partners on the business side. And what you gain from that is invaluable.
How big is the employed team? Because as you say, you've got a mix of dealer-owned, franchise setup.
Yep. So we have, it'll be approximately about 600 people around the world.
Employed.
Or on a full-time basis.
Yeah.
Dependent on where. And then we have another, give or take, about 400 extension of people around the world who will be either linked to a partner or a third party or a contractor, etc.
So it's already quite a scale.
It is large. The largest portion of that is in North America.
Yeah.
Because that is obviously our HQ business. It's our largest market in terms of turnover and cost. The rest of the world, whilst given that it's predominantly partner led, although it has the largest volume of participants and the largest number of events per capita, it's not. It's an isolated business, and the strength of the North America business.
So without wanting to upset your partner too much, what are the 3 places that you'd love to have on the portfolio that are not currently?
Oh wow. God, that's really put me on the spot there. Because you have things, we have things like a Hawaii, or we have, we're off to a Kids World Championship in Chongli, which is gorgeous. It's beautiful in China. We have Fiji. We're off to. You really put me on the spot. I'm not entirely sure. I'd love to do an event in Bali. Just on a personal level, I think the country is stunning. I think the people are stunning. We'd love to do an event in Brazil. We haven't been in the market, hasn't been in Brazil. It's one kind of foothold in LATAM that we've not really got to yet. Wow. You really...
So it sounds like you've got more
we've got a lot.
Locations than maybe your partner would like you to.
There is
aspire to.
There's definitely a lot, but I can give another one. But
That's brilliant. Well, thank you so much for coming in, Matt. I mean, it's an awesome enterprise that you're part of and that you're helping to pull together. And as you say, there's so many peaks and troughs of activity, and being the operator, you have to help people march up that hill each time you've got a gig on. Then you have to bring them back down and yet keep it all together in between those as well. It's a fascinating role that you've got, and I really appreciate you coming in to talk to us about it today.
Well, thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of FounderMetrics. Remember, the biggest of ambitions are within reach when you leverage the right metrics and strategies. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe and never miss out on any future ones. And don't forget to visit us on www.vested.com for additional resources, articles, and exclusive content. Join our growing community of entrepreneurs and founders by following us on LinkedIn, Twitter, X, and Instagram. We'd love to hear your thoughts and insights. Together, let's continue to unlock and share the metrics of success and create a brighter future.